Olá, pessoal. Hoje é dia 11 de março de 2026, são 11 horas e 11 minutos aqui na capital federal do Brasil. E a gente veio para mais um encontro do TBA, e dessa vez um encontro super especial, um encontro internacional com nossos colegas de Gana. E vamos já passando aqui para apertando a tecla SAP para o inglês, né? Now changing to English. I would like to invite the Sandra Sinicco, the co-leader for Tech Brazil Advocates, to lead this meeting. Sandra, with you.
Hi, everybody. I will start in Portuguese, first of all, just to give some updates, and then I'll move to English, okay? No problem? So, olá, pessoal, tudo bem? Nós estamos muito felizes de ter esse primeiro webinar com Gana, que é um país muito interessante, com uma população de mais ou menos 35 milhões de habitantes, mas que é hoje uma das portas de entradas mais importantes de tecnologia e inovação na África. Então, o Tech Advocates tem um grupo forte hoje lá, liderado pela Akosua e um outro colleague, que eu não lembro o nome exatamente, mas é que está aqui no call. E fala, você está em mudo.
Yes, Emma Williams there.
Ama
Yeah,
Williams.
just there.
Isso.
Okay. Just,
E aí a gente tem também junto conosco, além da Akosua Annobil, que é fundadora da Tech Gana, né? E é premiada em comunicação, ecossistemas tecnológicos, foi nomeada pelo Financial Times como uma das 100 líderes mais influentes no setor de tecnologia no Reino Unido, né? Avança com mais de 20 anos de experiência em campanhas de PR digital, parcerias estratégicas em eventos em nível presidencial. Nós temos o Keneshi Okeleke, que é diretor sênior da GSMA Intelligence e com grande experiência em temas como 5G, inteligência artificial, fintech, e é um dos principais autores de relatórios emblemáticos, como o Mobile Economy e o Digital Societies. Ele é muito focado nesse mundo da comunicação, além de ter mestrado em matemática e negócios internacionais. A Isobel Aquá é diretora para a África da Certa Foundation, que é uma instituição de advocacia. Ela é uma advogada transacional com experiência em bancos de investimento, né? Então, ela contribui com muitos relatórios científicos internacionais sobre segurança de IA e é formada em Direito pela University College of London e possui mestrado em Comunicação Intercultural. E, finalmente, o Isaac Newton é um estrategista de inovação e cofundador da Innovation Spark, que é a consultoria de transformação digital e de pesquisa também. Ele cofundou o Gana Innovation Journal, que é uma plataforma que monitora investimentos e políticas na economia de inovação de Gana, né? Ele lidera vários programas e é conector entre startups, investidores, governos, para fortalecer a economia digital. Então, essa oportunidade agora é para a gente explorar, conhecer um pouco mais sobre Gana, o ecossistema de Gana, ver oportunidades de negócios e o que nós podemos fazer juntos, como Brasil e Gana. Akosha, I now will change to English. I give you the microphone and then feel free to start your presentation.
So, good afternoon and good morning to everybody. And thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Henry. It's a pleasure to welcome all the members of the Tech Brazil Advocates and the Tech Ghana Advocates who are here today. And if you are not a member, I also welcome you. I'm Akosua Annobil, and for the past 9 years, I've had the privilege of building Tech in Ghana, which is a platform that's been dedicated to connecting Ghana's technology ecosystem with global networks. So Tech in Ghana is hosted twice a year in London and in Accra, and through 14 events, international events, in partnership with organizations like Google and the Bank of Ghana and the British High Commission. The goal for us has always been to help Ghana's innovators be seen and be heard and be connected internationally. So Tech in Ghana was launched in 2017, and it brings together founders and investors and policymakers and global technology companies to explore opportunities within Ghana's economy. The platform also sheds light on the country's most innovative startups who are building solutions not only for Ghana, but also regionally and in global markets as well. So since 2017, we've spent nearly a decade connecting the ecosystem to global markets, particularly between the UK and Ghana, and we've been helping to tell the story of what's happening in the market. Subsequently, the platform has grown to become one of the most consistent international platforms that's focused specifically on Ghana's tech ecosystem. Back in 2022, the founder of the Global Tech Advocates, which is Rush Shaw, he came to Tech in Ghana in Accra to launch the Tech Ghana Advocates, and that's helped us and has contributed to us connecting the local innovators to their global counterparts and telling Ghana's technology story internationally. One of the things we're most proud of more recently and this year is the release of our first Tech in Ghana ecosystem report, which has been produced in collaboration with the GSMA Intelligence. And the report, it has provided a much clearer data-driven look at the current state of the ecosystem, the opportunities, the momentum that we're seeing, and where Ghana sits in the broader African and global tech landscape, which you're going to hear all about shortly. So today's session is really nice. It's an extension of the work we've been doing already. There's a lot we can learn from each other, and hopefully the session can begin a more sort of structured exchange between the two countries and our two communities. So I just wanted to give a very short introduction to sort of myself and to Tech in Ghana, what we stand for, what we're about. And it gives me much delight to hand over to the experts, and one of which is Kelechi Okereke, who's from GSMA Intelligence. He's going to walk you through some of the key insights from the Tech in Ghana ecosystem report. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Sandra again for making this happen, and for all of you for joining us today. And I've got no doubt it's going to be a very insightful session. So over to you, Kelechi.
Thanks a lot, Akosua, and hello everyone. Kelechi Okereke here from GSMA Intelligence. It's a pleasure to join you. For those who may not know the GSMA, it's the research. GSMA Intelligence is the research of the GSMA. And the GSMA itself is the industry association that represents all mobile operators globally. And, for friends in Brazil, the mobile operators in the market are all members, fully committed members of the GSMA. And it's always a pleasure to engage with them on everything connectivity and digital in your local market. So I'll take us through, and I'll share my screen now, because I talked about the Tech in Ghana report, which we published a few months back, in December to be precise. So Tech in Ghana has been going on for 9 years now, as we just heard, but we decided to take this step recently to publish a report, which the intention is for it to be an annual report that will serve as a platform to further discuss and showcase the key trends in Ghana's tech ecosystem. And to do this beyond the activities, and the discussions that happen at the London and Accra events that happen as part of the Tech in Ghana event series. So this is the inaugural report. It's a pleasure to share that with you today. And after my presentation, Akosua will give us details on where we can find this report. What I've decided to do is to walk us through the report as it is, rather than put my presentation in slides. And the reason is because I wanted to give us a good look and feel of the report and how we have gone about drafting the narrative contained in it. You will see some images as we go along. These are not stock images. These are pictures from previous events, the Tech in Ghana, well, previous Tech in Ghana events. So as we go through, it also going to give you an idea of how these events, have gone in the last 9 years. So for this inaugural report, we started off by, going into the key trends shaping Ghana's tech ecosystem, and we mapped we gave an overview of Ghana's tech ecosystem, the key players within Ghana's tech ecosystem, and how tech in Ghana sits right in the middle of that ecosystem. So we have the Ghanaian diaspora, about 3 million Ghanaians who reside abroad. We have the government and policymakers, many of them fully engaged with, the work Akosua and the team are doing, including the Bank of Ghana, the Identity Commission, the telecoms regulator. We've got the telecoms operators as well. In Ghana, we've got the investors and VCs, as well as the development agencies. We have got the innovators and companies that are present in Ghana. And as we go down, we will see some case studies of 4 of those companies. And then very importantly, we've also got the tech hubs and accelerators. And, these organizations have been part of the Tech in Ghana story since it started. So going on, Ghana is obviously, one of the fastest growing digital markets in Africa. We have in here an overview of the key macro indicators in Ghana. Close to 35 million people live in Ghana. The GDP per capita is approaching $2,500. In terms of connectivity, unique mobile subscribers in Ghana, approaching 30 million, but total mobile connections is over 40 million. One of the success stories that we have seen in Ghana's tech ecosystem is the fintech landscape. So about 25 million people now use mobile money actively in Ghana, and the total transactions, over mobile money in Ghana last year was, over 8, billion Ghanaian cedis, which when converted to US dollars is over 200 billion US dollars. So if we move on very quickly to how Ghana sits in the regional landscape, because I know, the question that may be on some people's minds is, where does Ghana sit relative to other countries in Africa? And across the different indicators that we used, Ghana is doing fairly okay. So here we can see in terms of mobile internet usage, Ghana sits above the regional average at 55% of adults, that's 15 years and above, who now use mobile internet on a regular basis. Yes, it's below the leading countries like South Africa, Kenya, and Cote d'Ivoire. But at 55% of adults, it's way above the regional average. When we come to tech adoption, that is where there is still room for growth, particularly when it comes to the 5G story. And that is because 5G is beginning to take off. That's the dark blue line. It's beginning to take off in many markets across Africa. But Ghana still needs to catch up in terms of 5G. But Ghana has done pretty well, or is doing quite well in terms of 4G adoption, which at the moment is around 37%, but 3G still remains the dominant technology in Ghana. So what we expect is that over the coming years, as more of the mobile users within Ghana move on to 4G and 5G, this will open up new opportunities for the tech ecosystem in terms of the kinds of services that can now be delivered over mobile, beyond what is obtainable on 2G and 3G networks. In terms of smartphone ownership, 28% of the total population in Ghana own a smartphone. Yes, less than the regional leader, South Africa, but also higher than the regional average of 24%. Network coverage, 4G coverage in Ghana is among the highest in Africa at 99%. 5G networks have been built, around 7% coverage. Those services are yet, to pick up. So there is good availability of, 4G especially, and 5G coverage is also expanding as well. But this is where Ghana excels, and that is in fintech, mobile money. So after Kenya, which as many of us would know, as M-Pesa in Kenya being a regional champion in terms of mobile money, Ghana comes second in terms of percentage of adults who own a financial account, and this is primarily driven by mobile money. So this is an area where Ghana excels, and indeed many of the innovations that we're seeing across Ghana are being driven by mobile money and access to digital financial services. We go on in the report to provide a timeline of the key developments, that have shaped Ghana's digitalization journey, beginning from the 1980s. And we have highlighted quite a number of those developments leading up to where we are today, and all of these developments have shaped the ecosystem as we know it today. It gives us some perspective, of how things have progressed. And it also gives us an idea of how things could, progress going forward, as key stakeholders within the private sector and government in Ghana chart the future for the country's digitalization. So moving up ahead, and I'll call out here Hyperspace, being one of the key tech hubs in Ghana, based out of Kumasi. And this is an example of, the ecosystem players that are contributing to the development of the country's digital landscape outside of the capital, Accra. I'm sure many of our interactions may be with companies in Accra, but outside of Accra, we also have, organizations that are doing a great deal, and one of them is Hyperspace. So what are the challenges and what are the opportunities, that exist in Ghana's tech ecosystem? There are quite a number of them. Obviously, the rise of digitalization has made it possible for businesses, in Ghana to connect with customers worldwide, including in South America. And we're beginning to see a lot of innovation across agriculture, healthcare, education, financial services. Many Ghanaian companies are now doing business. Ghanaian startups, are now doing business internationally. And this has opened a wide range of, opportunities, to access new markets, new growth, for innovators in Ghana. But at the same time, there are challenges that need to be addressed, and we have touched on, some of these challenges in this year's report. These are all listed here. I won't go into detail because of time, but that now leads us, to the final section of the report where we put the spotlight on 4 Ghanaian startups that are doing excellently well, on a global scene. Today, the first one there is Farmerline. They are in the agricultural sector. They have been around since 2013, and they have become a key platform for connecting farmers in Ghana to markets, as well as to services to grow and to improve their productivity. We also have eCampus. eCampus is in the education sector. They have been in operation since 2015. And what they do basically is, using digital channels, help students to improve their learning and better prepare them for the workplace. So beyond what they learn from traditional schools, eCampus exposes them to more learning materials that ensures, that they're better prepared for what lies ahead beyond school. And apart from students, eCampus also has lessons and, different courses for people who are further up in their career. And then we have Yamachi Biotech, another success story from Ghana, and pretty much grew out of, the COVID era. But since then, has become a leading biotech company, driving research into genomics and different pathological issues, helping to bring that insight that does not exist in many instances for the African population, but driving that research, which in itself is also creating opportunities to bring about new treatments for different issues that people across the continent are facing. And then finally, we have Wahoo Mobility, been around since 2022. And Wahoo Mobility has come up with e-bikes. Bike transportation is very common in Africa, but as we all know, with the transition to cleaner forms of transportation, and the pollution, that traditional bikes have, Wahoo Mobility has come up with, the e-bike solution, and has also, built up an assembly plant back in Ghana. So in addition to driving, the transition to clean transportation, it's also contributing to the economic development of the country, by providing high quality jobs in manufacturing. And then finally, what we expect these reports to do as we produce them on an annual basis is, to come up with different calls to action for stakeholders within the Ghanaian ecosystem. So not just the policymakers, but every other person in the map I showed earlier on. And for this year's report, we have quite a number of issues that we have called out that needs to be addressed to drive growth in Ghana's tech ecosystem. Again, I won't mention each of them for the sake of time, but I'm sure, as we go into the report, we will have a clearer idea of what these issues are, and, feel free to engage, with different players within the ecosystem on these issues, and areas that you see opportunity to collaborate. And with that, I will hand back to you, Akosua, to let the team know where they can find the report.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kenichi. I've actually put a link to the report in the chat, but we can come back to that as well at the end of the session. And I'm sure we can share with everybody, perhaps via an email as well. But it is there for you to download for free. But, mindful of time, I'm going to swiftly, thanks again, Kenichi, move on to Isaac, who equally has incredible insights into Ghana's tech ecosystem. I'll let him continue from here.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'll let Isabel go first, then I'll come in.
No problem. Isabel, are you good to go?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, I can. Okay, wonderful.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to see, I did put some presentations together, but I will see if I can pull them up. Lovely to meet you all. I can't remember any of my Portuguese apart from Oi tudo bem, but it's great to have this collaboration. And I just had a few thoughts. And again, thank you so much to GSME Intelligence and also to Tech in Ghana. I think it's really good to have this deep dive. I'm coming from a legal policy background, just to frame the conversation. And so I'm looking really at 3 areas that I think would be interesting from a Ghana-Brazil perspective. Obviously, looking first at the dynamics between the 2 countries, which I think really makes a difference when you think about the types of use cases. So in the Global South, we're really designing, you've seen a lot of the tech startups or the ventures designing for the local context. And it's very clear, as the previous presenter showed, just this strong emphasis on fintech and also edutech, agritech, etc., and M-Pharma and others. So I think one of the good things about, again, this is me speaking as a Ghanaian, almost pitching to the Brazilian audience, is that we have the ability to solve complex problems. And by that, I mean, when you look at the Ghanaian landscape, for example, having 80 different languages, it means that our ventures are really, building against the odds. And so in terms of potential areas of collaboration, I really see the potential for Ghanaian ventures to really think about how to augment their use cases and build partnerships with Brazilian counterparts, especially when you're looking at artificial intelligence and emerging technologies. Brazil is a clear leader when it comes to AI in LATAM, but also has a very strong sustainability credential. And so I think there should be opportunities for partnership and collaboration. I also think a lot of Ghanaian ventures, and when we speak to ventures, a lot of them always, worry about funding. I think there's interesting opportunities to look at maybe additional sources of funding and operational partnerships, but also new markets and clients and opportunities for scaling. So again, Ghana is a great market, and this is opportunities for scaling both ways. Like looking at Ghanaian ventures that can support in areas like agri-tech in Brazil, but also Brazilian ventures using Ghana as a gateway for expansion into the continent. And so that was one area I think is worth exploring. The second area, and anybody who knows me knows I will always talk about the inclusivity in the digital ecosystem. And so there are parts, the guardrails, and again, looking from a policy angle, there's some of the guardrails that we don't necessarily cover. But obviously, digital technology has created new issues. And it's important that as we are building, we're not only thinking about it from a low literacy point of view, but there's a lot of online violence that happens. Technology facilitated gender-based violence is one aspect, but a lot of things around online extremist violence, etc. And I raise this because as we're building digital ecosystems and Ghana really presenting itself as a very strong leader on the continent, as the report has shown, in as much as it's a big emphasis on fintech, there is just technology, embedded in everything. So one of the key things is also to think about how are we building inclusive and safe ecosystems, especially for women and girls. And so an area of collaboration, and I've worked with some Brazilian researchers and counterparts around online extremist violence. And I think they've done a lot of great work in really addressing some of these issues that we have not necessarily built a lot of expertise in Ghana. And so how can we create research collabs that help to inform digital spaces? How can we have young people from both countries who work in the digital space and who work maybe around these more femtech, I would say, type tools, collaborate? And how can we adopt some of Brazil's existing initiatives and maybe bring them into the Ghanaian context? So again, thinking, very broadly. And then the last point I would say is pioneering strategic solutions. So we did some research and produced a paper, which I've added to this link as well, on data embassies. And this is a concept which was modeled by Luxembourg and Estonia, and it basically acts like an embassy and has, if you say your data is sitting in a different country, but subject to the laws of your country. And this is a big challenge now. We're having a lot of digital infrastructure deficits on the continent and a lot of data sovereignty questions. So again, as tech in Ghana, because you have this mandate and are not only looking at the wider sort of the macro, you don't only have the ventures and the startup founders, you're also bringing in policymakers and global leadership. One of the things we found is there's a lot of work that has to happen in terms of the technical capacity for the data center to act as a data embassy, but also too, there has to be a corridor of trust. And a corridor of trust was something that we realized was a very intangible request. Even if you have political will and strong legal governance and a strong physical infrastructure, you still need to have this robust corridors of trust. And so these are things that I think, as two countries that are really leading countries, pioneering countries in their respective regions, the data embassies is just one example. It is a discussion that I'm having with a Brazilian counterpart, but it's an example of the sort of strategic collaborations that could take place that should be driven by private sector, because private sector really understands the bottlenecks and the challenges that it has. I think there's political will in terms of digitization, in terms of AI adoption, but often policymakers don't fully understand the challenges. And so, in this case, Brazil has the largest data center market, does not have any issues around powering its data centers. Are there opportunities for us to collaborate? So I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much, and great initiative to bring these countries together.
Thank you, Isabel. It's amazing insight. I look forward to hearing people's feedback on that, especially on the data embassies. I think that's a great topic of discussion. Isaac, do you want to pick up from here?
Sharing my screen. I hope you can see it. Thank you, Akosua. Thank you to Sandra and the Brazilian tech advocates. I've been to Brazil twice. It's an amazing place. I was in Rio, Sao Paulo, Maceió. So I need to pick up my Portuguese and come back more often. But I'm hoping this can give us more opportunities to do some work together. Just going to share a little bit about why I think that Ghana could be a gateway for Brazil into Africa. Just briefly, the Innovation Spark, the company I work for, we like to think of ourselves like an API. So using the tech terms, we're connected to people, to institutions, to investors. So we get to have good conversations with everybody on what's going on. So we can also get to share the stories of what's going on. And that's the reports we have with the Ghana Innovation Journal. And I'll put the link in the chat later as well, so you can download the reports there. But we have lots of different reports we've done in our past, but also looking at things like AI, which I know is a very interesting area now. The whole world is moving to the AI area. So I think it's also very key to be aware of what's happening in the space. As Isabel mentioned as well, like there are lots of differences between Ghana and Brazil. Different scale, but I think shared opportunities. And yes, even in South America, Brazil is the largest economy there. It's a massive country, size, massive GDP, massive population compared to Ghana. So we're like just over 10% of the Brazilian population. GDP, you guys are way ahead of us. But if you look at other countries in your region, like Uruguay or Paraguay, you can see how Ghana is a bit bigger than they are. So if you're exporting your tech there, if you're training people, if you're supplying services to those countries, you can be rest assured that you can do that the same thing to Ghana as well. Looking at our tech startup scene, once again, same mission but different scale. I believe Brazil raised something like $3 billion in funding for tech startups. In Ghana, it was only 66. For Africa, it's very good numbers, but of course, if you look at the total Brazil numbers, it's small. But it shows you that there's a lot of need. Our most funded sector, like Brazil, is in the fintech space. We have various big tickets like ZPay, fintech. So you can see that there's a lot of need and demand. If looking over the years of our funding, you can see that it was in 2022, we had the most with $209 million. So things have fallen over the couple of years. It's picking up a little bit, but there's so much unmet demand that's not being capitalized. And right now, a lot of the funding in Ghana comes from US, from Europe. We're seeing a little bit of Asia coming as well. Other Africa, Nigeria, Kenya investing. But we haven't seen much or any South American investments in. And I think the cultures, the climates, the type of solutions that we're dealing with are very similar. So I think there's a huge opportunity to look across the Atlantic at Ghana and Africa for that. Also, just a little bit about the landscape in Ghana. We've seen technology and innovation hubs come to be. And these have really helped by providing training, access, and infrastructure to really then support the entrepreneurs that are now coming out of the training programs there, getting good support. We now have over 100 hubs spread across all areas of Ghana. So it's really a means to really get good access to startups across. I'll share the report, but just showing you the kind of oversight of we have a lot of the enablers that you need. So whether it's incubators or accelerators, whether it's investors, a big focus on female-focused initiatives. So we do have a strong gender lens, and on that note, happy International Women's Day for everybody. Whether it's developing government initiatives, development partners, academia and universities, bringing out IP, doing joint research, creating products, corporate involvement in the ecosystem, MTN is one of our big telecom companies. You have our banks and others that are playing a role supporting the ecosystem. You can see that lots of different actors that are active in the space, moving things forward. As well, lots of very interesting dynamic startups. I mean, as fintech is mostly the big question when it comes to tech, people doing cross-border payment, stable coin cross-border payments, payroll, payment gateways, saving, digital insurance. So lots of different types of fintech areas. But as was mentioned, also agri-tech, I think it's a very big space. Brazil is a very large exporter of agri-products, from the soybeans and beef and on a lot of things like that. Health was also mentioned. Also, when it comes to AI, for especially African standards, we have a few African countries that are very high in the AI readiness, and Ghana is one of them. South Africa, of course, is there. You have Morocco, Tunisia, Rwanda. So if you're looking at an AI product, AI services, Ghana is ready for it. And we have a lot of different actors. We have a Google AI HQ center in Ghana. So that also shows global partners seeing Ghana's ability and readiness and strategic positioning to support. And of course, a lot of our companies are already using AI to further what they're doing, whether it's fintechs or agritechs and whatnot. So I'll leave it there, and then happy to have the conversation. We're happy to answer questions along with Isabel, Kelechi, and Akosua of potentials and opportunities, both for Brazilians coming into Ghana and using Ghana as a gateway into Africa. We're much smaller, but it's easier than to run a pilot. Much smaller space, very stable, politically, economically stable. So it's easy to run a pilot from there or have there as your Africa HQ, and then expand there to larger economies like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and the rest.
Is that fantastic? One question that's in the chat from Victor, 750 million in how many startups did you, I don't think it was in the report, but in terms of the investment, do you know how many startups that those investments came into? Just a question for you to think about, perhaps come back with. But mindful of time, so Sandra, I know we had some questions, so should we just jump straight into the Q&A, see how we get on, let's say for the next 10 minutes or so, and
yes,
and then
yes.
yeah.
I'll say to everybody that the questions need to be put in the chat. So if you have questions, please do it in the chat, and I'll pass the first questions to Henry, and then I'll come back with some questions related to the data embassies. You are mute, Henry.
Sure. For my for all other colleagues, trying to send to me some of the questions, so I will read the first one here. So the first question is, recently, Brazil started several new collaborations with Ghana, like the ones with the digital education and learning technologies. 12 projects supported by UNESCO, during which Brazil is exchanging experience with Ghana. Brazil also established a partnership with agritechs for rice and corn, as well as with fintechs and e-commerce companies in Ghana. It seems that there is a trend now focused on energy and sustainability. Can you talk more about this? So this was the first question Sandra sent to me.
If you don't mind, then I don't mind stepping in here a little bit. Just last week, actually, it's a British, Brazilian, Ghanaian, Nigerian collaboration on agri-tech. So there's British technology, but they worked with Brazilian researchers and piloted the solutions there. I think it's called RLEAF, and they're looking to apply it both in Brazil, but also in Ghana and Nigeria. And I think, I mean, globally, we've always been connected, but whether it's language, communication barriers from telecoms and so on and so forth, I think people are realizing that there's a lot of similarities from our culture, the more family-oriented culture, from our tropical climates, from the food that grows there. So people seeing that these similarities make sense. So now it's not just South or Latin America and Africa and even Asia separate, but how can similar South-South collaborations work? And I think that's what you're seeing happen. Two of the speakers mentioned Farmerline. They're an agri-tech company based in Ghana, but they're operational in Brazil. And
Yeah.
one reason they expanded there is because it makes sense for them, from the culture, the type of crops they have experience in, and everything. And I think we're now seeing these as pilots and small expressions. But what I'm hoping now is that we sitting around this table get to help break the ice and realize, yes, as a Brazilian, I could expand into Uruguay or into Mexico, but I have a whole continent that has very similar challenges that I already have a solution for. I need to translate it from Portuguese to English to French to, actually, we have some Portuguese countries in Africa, like Angola, and expand there. I think that's what we begin to see. And Brazil has a lot of expertise also in energy. So I also see that being carried out in Africa as well.
Yeah, allow
Yes.
me to just pick up from there and just, add very quickly on the energy point. So today there are around 600 million Africans that live in off-grid locations. That's in locations without access to grid electricity. And, there's been a lot of debate around how this energy gap in the continent can be closed. And one of the solutions that is being talked about a lot is off-grid, power solutions that are targeted at specific, communities using various models like the ABC model, the Anchor business model, or the energy as a service company model, the ESCO model. So all of these models are being considered for Africa and Ghana inclusive, but we have seen, that Brazil has actually, gained a lot of experience in many of these off-grid solutions, supplying powers to, places like the Amazon and so on. So there are opportunities, to transfer that knowledge, that experience to Ghana, and to some other African countries. And I think that is where we're beginning to see, such collaboration take place.
Thank you, Kolekle. And thank you, Isaac. I have a question regarding it's a practical question. Maybe Isabel can answer, because I would like to know if there are regulatory restrictions for us to do business with Ghana, from Brazil to Ghana, and if there are also financial support or credit lines that can support an expansion to Ghana. And so how can we move between both countries while doing an expansion of our business?
So I think definitely Ghana is very open for business, and there are a number of foreign business owners. I think I like this conversation because I think, and Isaac also said this, it's important that we really look at global South collaborations, but you have a lot of businesses open in Ghana. Funding is usually sourced outside. So, the funding is cheaper, I would say, outside of Ghana, but setting up a business regulatory wise is pretty straightforward, strong legal system as well. So I think that's always important for investors, so that that there's clarity. If there's any contractual disputes, you have a strong legal system, legal precedents, and a strong independent judiciary, which is also very important. You never want to get in trouble, but it's important to recognize that. But the regulations are pretty straightforward, strong regulatory institutions. And so I think you will find a very dynamic foreign ownership within the ecosystem and across different industries, right? So we're talking about here in tech, but you can also look at tech-enabled industries, so other industries where you bring in a tech solution. There's a big focus on technology, but also there's a lot of work, I would say, also in the creative sector. And also I think there's a lot of challenges, as Kelechi would mention, around energy. And so bringing in sort of more renewable energy, which I think Brazil is also very strong on, could be very interesting as well. I think one thing that we don't talk about a lot is the agriculture, which Brazil has a very strong agricultural background, but also a very strong sort of a cattle and a lot of experience with rearing, meat and cattle, etc. And so they're very diverse backgrounds that I think are interesting, where I feel like the economy is quite nascent. So because Ghana is also quite a stable country, it's quite simple to get international funding. Like I said, the funding in Ghana is maybe not as cheap, but it's quite easy to get funding to support projects in the country because of its a stable, background, and it's not perceived as a very risky country.
Just adding, regarding the European Union, do you have funds for Ghana for expansion and introduction of new technologies? Do you know
you have a lot of money, but I guess EU money would probably support EU projects. But yes, there's a lot of EU funding, that goes into Ghana.
Okay.
So you
Henry,
have a lot of development partners there as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Henry, I would ask you to do the questions that are in the chat, maybe
Okay.
to drive.
Good. That was what I was to do, Sandra, because I was reading the questions I had noted here. They were all answered during the presentation, so very good lectures. It's very good content. Thank you very much so far. And by the way, Aquaba also here from Brazilian, so it's welcome, which is a part of the culture from Ghana. And I know that you are a very welcoming country, and it's clear to me that we are interacting here, and I'm very happy. Okay. There is a question here I will address to Akosua, which is very good, by the way, from Vitor Dudu from Brain Inovação. Here in Brazil, we have a big country. Most of startups are very Brazilian-focused companies. And the question Victor made is regarding to in Ghana, are the startup are they also focused in Ghana, or they have a more global mindset, or at least looking into the continent as a whole? So just give a flavor to us about the international mindset for the startups from Ghana.
Yeah, I think I alluded to it a little bit in my introduction, which is that we've got startups that have, from what we've seen through the Tech in Ghana platform, a lot of them begin with focusing on creating solutions to local problems. But what you find is that, some of them quite quickly then expand into the region, right? So, for example, even eCampus, Farmerline, a lot of them have gone into the Francophone countries, which are next door to Ghana. And in some cases, they end up, seeking or scaling further out into more international countries. So I think, with our startups, a lot of them start with the solution, and the problem that they're solving. And I think once they identify other markets in which they can then scale that solution, then they go for it. And I think what Isaac was saying as well about finding those, similarities in other countries, once that's been identified, and then there's a bridge to make that partnership happen, they're more than open to then scaling right outside of Ghana. So we've seen that happen. With Tech in Ghana's platform, a lot of them that have gone into maybe other European markets, or are looking into anywhere off of the continent. This is where they find a platform in the UK when we run Tech in Ghana quite useful. So Yeah, I mean, from what we've seen, absolutely, the mindset is there, but I would say that it's normally based on the solution itself. Like, I think it's not just a matter of scaling for scaling's sake. I think they're quite calculated about where they're going, why they're going there, and whether or not that solution is welcome in the country that they're going into. I don't know if anybody else has got anything to add to that.
Maybe then
I
I'll
have.
just
Okay.
uh,
I will follow with the next question. What's the growth rate of deep tech in Ghana ecosystem? Deep techs here in Brazil are now very, very, and they're growing very fast. So I would like to know about this sector, the specific sector. Maybe Kaneshi can inform us. Maybe you got it from the report or some numbers about deep tech in your area.
Okay, yeah. So deep tech generally across Africa is still in the emerging stage, still nascent, but it is growing very rapidly. And we're seeing this, obviously with the emergence of AI, but also very importantly, with the presence of the global tech companies. In Ghana, for example, Isaac talked about, the likes of Google, that have got, the regional offices in Ghana. So they are, pretty much driving the growth of deep tech. But I think, a key area of opportunity, will be in funding for research and development. So this is an area where African countries more broadly, have lagged other regions globally. But as we see governments, private sector players, development partners put a lot more money into R&D, then we're likely going to see the region's, deep tech sector begin to pick up momentum, if I'm to put it that way. So for now, it's primarily centered around AI, which is solving a whole lot of very simple, problems, from simple problems to more complex problems. But in my presentation and in the report, we featured, Yamachi Biotech. That is an example, of a deep tech company in the biotech space that came up in the last 3 to 4 years, and they're doing excellently well. So as more R&D funding, begin to go into AI, quantum, clean energy, we will certainly see the deep tech space in Ghana, really emerge as a force to contend with.
Perfect.
if I can just add to
Yes,
that,
yes.
also, like, I think some policies have come into place that are helping entrepreneurs also innovate in that space. Recently, Ghana passed the digital assets, so blockchain and crypto is now legal in Ghana. So now you're gonna have a lot more innovators looking at the blockchain and crypto spaces. For the pharmaceutical area, there's a huge project by the EU Global Gateway to support the pharmaceutical industry in Ghana. There's also political will by the president to make Ghana a pharma hub for not just Ghana, but also Africa. We all lived through the Corona experience, and Africa was the last place to get the vaccines, and we were heavily reliant on third party. So how can we have more local capacity in? And whether a lot of this now is coming from India, if it's not coming from the West, then it's coming from India. But of course, a lot of this kind of deep tech and others can also come from Brazil.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Henry, now you're the next question from the audience.
Well, Sandra, I will have to leave after this question. I'm sorry for that. I had booked another appointment. But regarding to it was a continuation from my last question regarding to the African and the international profile of the company, the startups from Ghana. But it's a question, Sandra wrote me another question which was related to the number of different idioms, languages inside the country. And I think that this must be very difficult for you to deal with, but at the same time, it's a big opportunity for you to deal with several different languages. And I believe that this is also helping the companies from Ghana to go abroad because you have very good, I would say, experience with that. If you can just go into this subject, it would be good. I don't know.
Yes, I mean, I mentioned that we have about 80 different languages, and across Africa, we have 2,000 different languages. And that's what makes, building sort of large language models very difficult. But I think it also gives us, and that's what I was trying to explain, that, I think Ghanaian ventures can build with a lot of complexity. And that rigor in trying to really understand like the nuances of language that you cannot take for granted is really shaping them to then be able to bring solutions in other areas. And so I think it's a very interesting concept, but it also sometimes, it can slow down development, but I think it also enhances and increases the way that they have to work and develop and their creativity. I would say there's a lot of incredible creativity in Ghana and on the continent, but it's one of the big issues that we have. And so when we look at Global South comparators, it makes sense looking at India that also has like 1,000 different languages. When you compare with Ghana and Brazil, it's not the same, especially when you think about how are you being inclusive? How is language, which is a tool of inclusivity, really working? You can do that quicker in Brazil if you have 98% speaking Portuguese. It's much harder in a country like Ghana. And it's not the only one. Most African countries have this language dynamic.
Great. Okay, ciao, Henry. Nice to have you here.
Henry, thank you so much. Thank you for your patience.
Yes.
So should we take one more question and then wrap up?
Yes, I was going to propose this. And then the following questions, we're gonna deliver them to you. And then maybe you can answer by email, okay? So I would like to explore a little bit more about the data embassies. How can we move forward with this? So is this a project that maybe Tech Ghana advocates and Tech Brazil advocates can help on establishing liaisons, and to whom should we address, and how can we work together on this?
Yeah, I think it would be very good. And I mentioned I put the paper in the link as well. And we did have a Brazilian, actually, one of my Brazilian colleagues also provided some insights. He works for ITS Rio. And I think it's important that we leverage each other's knowledge, especially when it comes to the fact that you've got these strong digital infrastructures. So it's something that I think would be great as an initiative, because both tech in Ghana and tech in Brazil have a strong policy mandate as well. And so it's something that we can look at, maybe having a roundtable and discussing, and maybe an internal stakeholder roundtable. But it's gaining a lot of momentum. I'm actually going back into a meeting on this same topic. But when I spoke to Fabro, my Brazilian colleague, he actually then got this concept into the new law that you produced last year, opening up Brazil to become a data embassy host. And so I think there are lots of interesting opportunities, even if we look at the sovereignty question and create data embassies in Africa. One of the things, like I said, the model that UAE and India were using was to have like a mirroring effect. And so there are lots of different opportunities to look at, and I'd be very happy to join a call with yourselves and Tech in Ghana on this. Thank you.
Yes, for sure. So finishing our call, I drive you the microphone to Akosua, and for the last words. And the other questions that we have here will be addressed, the answers will be addressed to each one of you. Thank you. So,
Thank you so
Akosua, if
Yeah,
you...
thank you. No, thank you so much. And I think this is a perfect example of the way that we just get conversations started, right? These are two, different worlds with probably so many crossovers. And I think, for us, it's all about creating, the rooms for conversation. And I think this is a perfect example of that. The next steps are always, where we often trip up. And I think hopefully we can continue these conversations between the two of us through perhaps, as Isabel mentioned, quite quickly moving on with another sort of data embassy conversation. And I know next month as well, it's going to be Brazil's turn to present to Ghana what the opportunities are there. So perhaps we can use that as another opportunity to continue the conversation.
Yes.
But I really just want to thank everybody for today, especially, Isabel, Isaac, Kelechi, for your time. Really appreciate it. In regards to the Tech in Ghana and GSMA report, you can find the link to that in the chat. Also, you can get all the links for Isaac and the Innovation Journal and their fantastic insights and reports as well. That's all can be found in the chat. And for the Tech Ghana advocates, if you want to find out more about us and get involved or join even, then please join us on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to Emma Williams, who's on the call. You can find her on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, let's keep the conversation, do keep in touch. And thanks again to everybody for your help. If you happen to be in London or anywhere near Ghana, reach out to us. Tech in Ghana is on the 11th of June in London, and then on the 24th and 25th of November in Accra. You're welcome. Perhaps we can, do some kind of a business mission or something, Sandra, if not this year, perhaps next. But yeah, open to keeping the conversation going. So thank you, everybody, for your time today and for this really important conversation.
Thank you, everybody. Obrigada a todos que estiveram aqui com a gente. Como eu disse, as informações é só pedir para a gente ou diretamente para eles. E espero que tenhamos aberto uma porta nossa do Brasil com Gana para poder avançar em discussões. Em breve nós vamos montar um grupo de trabalho para falar de data embassies. Um abraço e até mais. Tchau, tchau.
Tchau, tchau.